Hi. I've been teaching chess for many years, and for the longest time I thought that the youngest that someone could learn chess was somewhere in the age range of like 4 to 5 years old. And one day my 2-year-old daughter asked me to play a game of chess with her. And well, it's not easy to say no to your 2-year-old, and it's also not easy to say no to one of your dreams, which, one of almost every chess player's dreams is that their kids will play chess with them one day, or play chess at all one day. So I stopped and I thought for a moment, and I had an idea that it might be possible to teach, or not teach, but it might be possible for a toddler to play chess. It might be possible to start guiding a toddler into playing chess. And I tried it out and it worked. So today I'm going to show you that and give you, fairly all-encompassing advice about how really little kids, let's say age 2 to 5, would be able to learn chess and practice chess and start playing it. And at the end of the video, I'll even show you an example of this working. So just real quick, my name is David on chesskid.com, where I've created a lot of content for kids, a lot of videos. I was one of the original designers of that site. On that site, I go by The Playful Squirrel, and so that is the name and persona that I also use in my kid videos and so forth, and my weekly chess TV show for kids. I've been playing chess since I was 5 years old, started playing in tournaments at 12 and teaching chess at age 14. And I've taught a lot of things over the last 25 years, including a lot of chess. So I've got a fair amount of experience with that. All right, so the first thing is that chess itself has, 32 pieces on a 64 square board. There's like 6 different pieces, I think, that move in 6 different ways. So to learn it formally the way an adult or, a teenager would learn the game is very difficult cognitively for a young one to learn in terms of like formal rules and structure and all that. They've got a much better chance of learning it piece by piece and intuitively. So what I'm going to start with is I'm going to show you a few mini games, 3 different mini games that you can teach. And by practicing these mini games, you can slowly learn how to use 1 or 2 pieces at a time until you've kind of learned and mastered all 6 of the pieces without having that sort of overwhelming experience of there's all these pieces everywhere. The game takes a really long time for a little kid, so it's going to test their patience. They're not going to get to a resolution, which is going to be kind of reward to a game, is when the game finishes in some way. So having to start a game and then quit before it's over every single time is not the most rewarding experience. These mini games, however, a 2-year-old will have the patience to get through to the end of them. So the first one I present to you is, I know it as The Farmer and the Piggies, but as you can see with my final bullet point here, the game can be reskinned, rethemed, right, to be anything, right? It doesn't have to be a farmer with piggies. It could be, dinosaurs, lambs, pirates, whatever you want. There's one group that for some reason is coming down the board and trying to get to the end of the board. It could be a race for them. With the farmer and the piggies, the idea is that the piggies are trying to escape the pasture. They just want to run away for whatever reason, and the farmer's like, no, come back, and trying to like catch them all before they get to the end of the board. But you can probably hopefully if you're a good parent or teacher, think of multiple different stories that could be used for this game. All right, so first of all, your child could play either side, but start them out with 1 piece as the farmer, shall we say, for now. So in this picture I have for you, it's a rook or castle, which is at the bottom of the board, the 1 white piece. And that piece is the only one that they have to move, and they're going to try and catch all your piggies as your piggies come down the board. The easiest pieces for them to start out learning are the rook and king. They've got the simplest movement rules. The rook moves straight, up, down, left, or right, as many squares as it wants to. And so, its possibilities of movement are always like a, little plus sign moving around the board. And the king moves exactly one step in any direction. So up, down, left, right, but also in the 4 diagonal directions. So it's just a little cloud around him, a little square of all the places that the king can go to. So start with those and repeat them, many times before you move on to more complicated pieces like the queen, the bishop, and the knight. I would normally start with 2 piggies to catch. There's 3 in this picture, but you can eventually add in all the pawns until you've got all 8, if the piece catching them is strong enough. Now, one of the things is if you put 8 pawns, it's, very, very difficult to catch all 8 pawns. The queen can do it, but the other pieces, not sure that they can do it. So you don't want to give your kid an impossible goal. So I would start with 2 piggies, and you play for the piggies. You try and move them down the board. Your kid's going to catch your piggies successfully. Be very happy and excited, get positive feedback immediately. I think for most kids, positive feedback is pretty important, so I would suggest letting them succeed at this or any other game that comes up in the course of what I'm going to show you at least 3 times before you move on to the next level. So they catch your 2 piggies, they're all excited, let them catch them again and again. Try out some different ways of running your piggies, try out different sound effects as your kid catches your piggies. Keep them like excited and entertained. You've got to really build up the story part of it, or if they're pirates, arr, arr, arr. I mean, you gotta get into it. You gotta sell it. Gotta do some acting if you want to keep it fun. And then if you want to get it challenging as well as fun, that's when you start adding in an extra pawn, and then an extra pawn, and then an extra pawn. So soon their rook will be trying to catch 3 piggies and then 4 piggies and so forth. Same for the king. It can catch 2 or 3 piggies. And yeah, your kid's obviously going to have to understand how the piggies move as well. So even if you only give them 1 piece, 1 king or 1 rook, they're going to have to understand how the pawns are moving as well to learn this game. And then as they know how to use the king and the rook, then you could give them the king and the rook, 2 farmers, right? Who are working together to catch some bigger army of piggies, right? So you can put 6 piggies on the board and say, oh no, there's no way the king can catch 6 piggies by himself. He can't. The king's pretty slow, right? So, the king and the rook are going to have to work together to catch these piggies. So on you go, just gradually moving up the difficulty levels and also just providing variety by using some different pieces. All right, next mini game that I have for you is mazes. So basically you can set up some kind of board position, and then you've got a piece that's supposed to go through the maze. In the lower left image I have here, the white queen in the corner is the piece that's running the maze, and the maze is defined with black pieces, and the white queen is supposed to get to the square marked in red without, walking on any of the black pieces. So anyway, it's possible, and you can do that with the queen, and you can do that with the rook, you can do that with the knight. Not that exact maze. That maze, in fact, only a queen or a knight could probably get through. Every other piece would be blocked. A king could get through it, actually. Yeah, so a king could go through this maze. But anyway, different mazes might suit a knight or a queen or a rook, etc., right? But you can set up any maze you like and have the piece go through it, and that's a great way for them to learn the piece movements of one single piece at a time. Everything that's building the maze doesn't matter, right? I mean, you could use blocks instead of chess pieces to make it more obvious that it's a maze, right? I just was drawing this on a chessboard for you, so I used what I had available in the chess website, which was chess pieces. But you could put blocks, you could put different animals, dinosaur figures, whatever you want around to make the maze, and then have the chess piece move through that maze. And they can do many, many, many mazes with like the king first, let's say, and then they can switch to mazes with the queen, and then mazes with the rook, right? And so you can sort of build up their familiarity and their skill with one piece at a time that way also. And, some kids would prefer the farmer and the piggies, where they're kind of playing against you, where there's sort of a story. Some kids might prefer the mazes. And you could also, for these mazes, you could print out a bunch of mazes and leave it as something for the kid to do when you're not there, if you've got a kid who can already draw a line to show the way through. Now, that might not be your average 2-year-old, but, 4-year-old and a lot of 3-year-olds could draw a line to show where the queen goes on a piece of paper. So you could leave that as kind of like an exercise handout sheet, if you like. And then eventually these mazes can get much harder. I mean, the first level of a maze where you're just walking through the maze with one piece, and there's only one piece you have to know how to move. I mean, it's not particularly challenging. It's not supposed to be. I mean, your kid's supposed to have success. But this also has ways of increasing the difficulty level. For example, I made the maze in the right-hand corner here. Here you've got a black knight highlighted in red in the corner, and it's supposed to get through this maze. Here I've made the maze out of same colored pieces because in a game, a knight's not allowed to, or no piece is allowed to capture their own pieces. So this knight can't go on any of those black squares, but the knight has to capture that one white pawn en route to completing the maze on that highlighted square in the upper right corner known as H8. So now they have to find a very intricate hopping around the board with this knight. This maze here is much more difficult, and anyway, it's an example of what you can do with this notion of mazes. Mazes can also have some stories associated with them if you like. All right, now we get into something pretty serious, the king game. Now this is a game which I would have older students play as well because it teaches really, really fundamental chess concepts at a deep level for just how to use the king. In fact, I have a whole video just about this game that I made for the Chess Kid YouTube website. And I've had, adults learning chess practice this game. So if you yourself are, an adult who is also trying to learn chess at the same time as your kid, this is a very good game for you to try to master. So the kings always start on the two squares you see here, which are known as H1 and H8. And the first person to safely move their king to either C8, A8, C1, or A1 wins. Obviously, the white king has to go to the squares on the black side of the board, and the black king has to go to the squares on the white side of the board. And you have to do that without ever moving your king where the opponent's king can take you, because it's illegal in chess for a king to step where the other king can take him. So, with that premise, you might, at first hearing about this, think that this is very basic. The kings run towards each other, and then they're just blocking each other, and then whatever. There's no way to get by unless your kid makes a mistake. Is this just so that your kid can learn some basic mistakes? No. From the starting position, there is one move for white which can win by force if you have fully understood this. One move which can lead to a draw where the kings do get blocked and they can't get past each other. And one move which will lose if the black player is very well versed in this. They'll be able to win by force. So the game itself seems very manageable. All your kid has to do is move their king around one step at a time anywhere they want to. I mean, it doesn't really get simpler than that for what's on the board. But if they get good at this, they will actually be like a great chess player already, even with no other piece on the board. I kid you not, and they're going to be learning fundamentally how to fight with certain kinds of puzzles, which are the kinds of skills that you want them to get out of chess anyway. And finally, like every mini game, this can be leveled up as well if you want. You could put like a block on E4. That's one of the central squares. Anyway, just for example, you could put a block on any square and say neither king can go through this square, and then see if that changes the game. Or you could put a couple other treasures on the board and say, hey, your king wants to pick up this ring and this necklace, and then, try to make it to the red squares. So, yeah, every game can be complicated once it's mastered. All right, another thing that can be useful to do is to practice basic checkmates, and this is a little drill module on chesskid.com, which is currently called Workouts. The screenshot here is from that. And within Workouts, there are a series of basic checkmates, and these introduce you to one piece other than the king at a time. Like you can checkmate with a king and a couple rooks against a king, or a king and a queen against a couple rooks. This goes beyond the mini games I showed you before, because these now include the rule of checkmate. Now, checkmate is the object and the purpose of chess. All three of my mini games had a different purpose than checkmate, right? They had a different way to win. Well, checkmate's a very, very difficult concept. So it can be hard to start with checkmates. And if you don't understand checkmate, it's rather hard to play chess, since that means you haven't understood the goal of the game. But anyway, this is a great place to now introduce your kids to the concept of checkmate, you can do this on your own with a board. You don't need to do it on the workout, but here's a picture of it, at least. You can take 2 rooks and try and checkmate the king with just 2 rooks. White doesn't even need their king for this. So to make the board even simpler for your kid, you could leave the king off the board and just have your 2 rooks checkmating the black king. And then the next simplest basic checkmate to learn is king and queen against king, where you will need your king and queen. And if your kid can learn even one of these basic checkmates, then they will at least know what checkmate is. That's pretty fundamental. So this can be a pretty good thing to do. And I will mention that, everybody learns in different ways. Some people learn by doing, some by listening, some by watching, some by seeing an example, some by asking questions about something. And one thing you can do with this is you can learn these checkmates yourself using a site like chesskid.com, where you can practice against a computer. That's what's built into these workouts. You can practice it against a computer. Your child can just watch you as you learn to do it. Or if you know how to do it, you can just sort of demonstrate it on there, and your kid can watch you trying again and again and sort of learn it from having watched how you do it, rather than just sort of fishing around on their own. If you just give them this position and say, try to checkmate, and they don't have any concept of how to do it, it's going to be very difficult. If you tell them, well, slowly, back the black king into a corner by taking away space from him, that may be too abstract for your kid as well, right? So actually just seeing it done is going to be the best way for a lot of young ones to learn it, I would guess. And now let's get to the main event. Your 2-year-old can play a game of chess. They can. It is possible. And you'll see a 2-year-old play at the end of this. All right, my first point, which I'm going to emphasize more than once in this video, is only play chess with a child who has asked to play. Okay? Don't be like, hey, it's time for you to learn chess. Your dad knows how to do it, and now it's your turn, right? You only want to play chess, in my opinion, with the child who is asked to play. I think this goes for any activity you want your kid to adopt. Your best odds will be if they somehow have some interest in it rather than you telling them to do it. And a lot of kids, if you let them know that you want them to do something, they will wield that against you as a kind of power, or they will just simply refuse, just in order to jockey for position in the family. So you may want to be careful about letting them know how much you're praying for them to become a chess player. All right. So here's how to do this. Once your kid has said, Mom, I want to play a game of chess. And you say, okay, sweetie, I guess I could find time for that today. So here's how you do it. You set up the board. You can do it with all the pieces. On each move, you ask the child which piece they want to move. So you just say, which piece do you want to move? And they can just point to it. It's easiest when you have actual chessboard in front of you. The example I'm going to show you later today is on a screen, so it's much harder. I would have had to have him rub his grubby hands all over the screen. But with a chessboard, it's very easy. They can just point to the piece they want to move or grab it. And then you will tell them all the legal moves of that piece. So your kid doesn't even have to know how a bishop moves or how a knight moves to do this. You just tell them, well, that piece can move to these squares. Which one of these squares would you like to move to? And then the kid will tell you, I would like to move to that square. And that's it. Then they've moved. Then you make a move, and then you ask them, which piece would you like to move? And you can see this little image here. On this one, you'll see that there are these little dark circles marked on a couple squares. That's because I've clicked on the bishop. And so that's how it works on chesskid.com actually by default. If you're playing a game on chesskid.com, if you click on a piece, it'll show you where that piece can move. So a kid from a very young age can start actually playing on chesskid.com because it's kind of built in that they just have to click on a piece, and you might want to put them on a tablet, right, where they can click on a thing. It's generally an easier interface than a mouse, I think, for a young kid. But they can just press the piece they want to play, and then these little circles appear, and then they can press on whichever circle they want their piece to go to, and their piece will go there. Voila. And just like that, they're basically playing right away. Now, the one thing I will say also about this is playing a full game of chess takes a while, right? And, I've never seen a 2-year-old that played a full game of chess, that played 40 moves, that sat down and played a 40-move chess game. That I haven't seen. So when I say they can play, I mean they can play a few moves and then move on to something else. Whenever they choose to, just say like, oh, that was lots of fun. Let's go do this other game that you want to do now. Wrap it up in some kind of positive way. If they want to save the position, keep playing from the same position later, sure. If they just want to, start over a new game next time, sure. If they just leave it, that's fine. Whatever, wherever they leave it, that's what you're going to roll with. Do not expect that you're going to sit down and play a full game right away. Now, another important piece of advice for playing games, as I said, the kid needs positive feedback. They need to win games, but they also need to see that chess is a competition where people are trying to play like good moves, and it's also good for their chess to see good moves from you. If you're just playing terrible moves on purpose to lose to your kid, that's not how I advise teaching anybody. Sometimes on my stream people say like, gosh, you're playing like a total beginner and you just like slaughtered them in 7 moves. Why didn't you like go easy on them or play bad moves? Well, because like, what's the point of them playing a good player if I play bad moves on purpose? Then they might as well have been playing some other bad player, right? So you want to instill what good moves look like. A lot of times people play good chess because just sort of by having seen good chess, they've internalized what good chess looks like, and then they sort of accidentally imitate a lot of it. So you want to play really good moves against anybody who's learning chess. All the advice here on this slide applies to any age student, 2 years old, 20 years old, 80 years old, whatever. So you're going to want to play really well, but you want the person you're playing against to have a chance to win. Okay? And the solution to that is something called playing with odds, or material odds, or piece odds. All those phrases mean the same thing if you hear them. Material odds, piece odds, or odds. There are other kinds of odds you can give, like you could have your eyes closed, you could have your hands behind your back, you could have like 1 minute on a chess clock and your opponent has an hour. But none of those are useful in the way that piece odds is useful. So that's really what you want to go with. You want to go with piece odds, material odds, and that means you start the game with different amounts of pieces. And against a total beginner, I mean, you can basically start with just your king and 1 or 2 pawns and give them a whole army. It looks a little bit like Farmer and the Piggies, and just let them hunt your king down and learn to checkmate. And then when they've succeeded how many times? When are we going to add on a new piece for us? That's right, when they've succeeded 3 times. When they've succeeded 3 times, you're going to add a new piece for you, and the level is going to keep going up, and you'll add on pieces, and they'll continually have like a fair amount of success, occasionally get stuck at some level where they can't win as consistently, practice it a few more times, win more consistently, and move on to the next level. Now, I think in general, this is true that winning and positive reinforcement is important for someone's confidence, but that, if you win every game, you're not learning as much. You're not getting some kind of like feedback, right? It actually takes losses to really learn the most in chess, or in most things. You need some failures, some hiccups, some bumps. So based on your knowledge of the personality of your student, which for our purposes is probably like a kid, but if you apply this to, some other student, you can apply this as well. Depending on their own sort of tolerance for setbacks, their own need for being built up versus their interest in just like, wrestling with difficulties, you'll have to sort of figure out what difficulty level to set it at. But generally, I would say a win rate between 25 and 75% is important. So that means for every 4 games you play at a certain level, ideally, your student would be winning 1, 2, or 3 of those 4 games. Because if somebody's winning every single game or losing every single game, they're not really getting feedback on when they're playing better or worse. Because when they play better, they win. When they play worse, they win. Or in the other scenario, when they play better, they lose. When they play worse, they lose. If they're always winning or losing, either one, then they're not really learning the lesson of whether their moves were better or worse, right? They're not getting any feedback on whether they've played better or worse. If I play and one game I play better and one game I play worse, and the game I play better I win and the game I play worse I lose, I'm getting feedback there on how well I'm playing or not, right? So that's very important. All right, so that's best. You want to keep it in that range. Once the kid's winning 3 games in a row, they're probably getting past that 75% marker, and you up the level, okay? And yeah, that's it. I've already said the other advice here, just in a different order. Always play your best. And now some final advice for you before I show you an example of this in action. So as I sort of alluded to above, a little one can practice against the level 1 robot on Chess Kid. It's extremely weak. It's programmed to basically not recapture when you capture things. So your little one can just capture all its pieces, and it basically won't provide any resistance or ever capture their pieces. So it's good for positive feedback and for feeling like they can play a whole game. The weakness there is they're going to learn very bad habits. They'll learn just like, walk around with 1 or 2 pieces capturing everything because the opponent never captures that piece. So it's not going to be very good for learning the game, but it is a possible module for practicing moving pieces around. The level 2 robot is already going to be really tough, so it's probably going to come once your kid has some significant practice under their belt with either the mini games and then with playing with you probably. There's also something on chesskid.com and on many websites which are chess puzzles, which are basically positions where there's one move that leads to checkmate or one move that captures a piece of the opponent's that's not defended. And so you look at the position, you have to spot where's the checkmate or where's the piece you can take. These are very, very good activities for getting better at chess, and they're quite accessible. They're usually 1 or 2 moves long at the lowest level. Well, they're always 1 move long at the lowest level, and then eventually as you get good at them, the puzzles will usually up their difficulty level for you. So that can be a great tool pretty early on for getting better at chess. And playing with a friend is basically ideal. My 6-year-old can play a game like this against a friend, and at 5 she could as well. And I think in general 5-year-olds can play a game of chess against each other. But like 2 or 3-year-olds are unlikely to be able to play against each other without an adult guiding them. As you saw, all the games I showed you so far today involve quite a bit of guidance from an adult, right? So expect that for about a year or 2 of chess training, your little one's going to be relying on you to help them be sort of like an interface between them and the game, asking them which piece they want to move, telling them what the legal moves are because they won't be remembering all that at first, etc. And eventually, when your kid gets into kindergarten or 1st grade, chess clubs are going to be the most awesome thing for their future development, both chess-wise and socially. Finally, let's just talk for a moment about how we don't want to ask our little one to play with us, usually. Usually that's going to not work out. So how do you get your kid to play chess without ever suggesting it to them as an activity, right? What's worked for me is when I play a bunch of chess, then my kids are like, hey, can we play? And that works with a lot of things. If I sit down at the piano, my kids come running immediately, move, our turn, kick me off the bench. If I ask them, do you kids want to do a puzzle today? No. If I get out a puzzle and start trying to do it, they run over, pull the piece. You watch, Dad, I do the puzzle. You help me. How do I help? You just sit there. So I think that as far as I know, the most useful technique, it's a little devious, but it's like, 2-year-old level devious, is for you to play some chess and then they may ask about it. And then that's when you can let them do it. And again, when they've asked for it and you say, yes, you can play chess, in general, I would say you're much better off starting with these 3 mini games than with, the playing with the 2-year-old that I showed you. I started off just straight off, though, with playing with the 2-year-old. So that is totally possible. That's what I did, but I hadn't thought it through, right? That was like what I thought of in like 15 seconds. That was 15 seconds worth of inspiration. That was not a clear method that I thought about for a while. So I would say, you say, yes, we can play chess. We're going to play, the farmer and the piggies, and that's part of chess or whatever, right? So that's where I would start. Finally, as your kid starts playing actual games, don't give them a ton of advice. That's overwhelming and generally less fun, right? If they ask you for advice, then you can give them advice. And even then, I would limit it to 1 piece of advice at a time. It's hard for anyone to work on multiple different goals or ideas at a time, right? So in general, people need to work on 1 thing at a time. And that's very true for kids. They will easily be overwhelmed otherwise. All right, so now check out this little clip of a 2-year-old playing chess just as like an example for you. And if you've got any questions about any advice in this video, drop it in the comments and I will be very happy to answer your questions for you. Good luck and have fun with your kids. Let's see how he does against the robot. Qu'est-ce que tu veux bouger? Un pion ou un cheval?
Un pion.
Ok. Je vais te montrer tous les pions. Tu veux celui-là, ou celui-là, ou celui-là, ou celui-là, ou celui-là, ou celui-là? Celui-là?
Yeah.
Ok, he wants this one. Ok. Qu'est-ce que tu veux bouger maintenant? Un pion, un cheval, la reine, le fou?
Le fou.
Le pont. Le fou. Ok. Où est-ce que tu veux aller avec le fou?
Eat it.
Tu veux manger quelque chose avec le fou? On peut pas encore. Est-ce que tu veux aller ici? Ou ici? Ou ici?
You pick. I want that.
Tu veux ça? Ici?
Yeah.
Ok. Oh. Les noirs ont joué ici avec leur pion. Qu'est-ce que tu veux faire? Tu veux bouger? Tu veux bouger un cheval maintenant? Ok. Celui-là ou celui sur ce côté-là?
On the other side.
Ici? Ou celui-là?
That.
This one. Ok. Tu veux ici ou ici?
There next to it.
Ici?
Yeah.
Ok. Ok. Maintenant, qu'est-ce que tu veux faire? Quelle pièce est-ce que tu veux bouger?
The queen.
Ok. Et où est-ce que tu veux aller avec elle? Ici, ici ou là?
Go white on.
Sur lui?
Yeah.
Tu veux manger ça? Ok. Oh, regarde, le robot est fâché.
Yeah.
Tu as mangé son fou.
Wait. Oh.
Qu'est-ce que tu veux bouger maintenant?
Is somebody?
Tu veux manger quelqu'un? Ok. Qui est-ce que tu vas manger? Quelle pièce?
The cheval?
Celui-là? Tu veux manger ça?
Yeah.
Ok. Bah, personne ne peut aller là maintenant. Qui est-ce que tu veux bouger vers le cheval? Ton pion, ton cheval, ta reine. Qu'est-ce que tu veux?
Cheval?
Ok. Celui-là? Ou celui-là? Oui, celui-là?
Yeah.
Et où est-ce que tu veux le mettre?
Next to the back
Ici,
house?
ici, ici,
That.
ici, ici,
Yeah.
ici?
Yeah.
Ok. Maintenant où? Quelle pièce est-ce que tu veux bouger maintenant? Un pion, un cheval, un fou, une reine ou une tour?
A tour.
Un tour. Ok, ce tour-là ne peut pas bouger. Oh. Ce tour peut bouger. Cette tour peut bouger là si tu veux.
Yeah, please.
Tu veux faire ça?
Yeah.
Yeah, please. Très poli. Ok, qu'est-ce que tu veux bouger maintenant?
A poo.
Un pion?
A poo.
Un pou?
A poo.
La reine? Un pion?
You pick that.
Celui-là?
No.
Celui-là?
I picked the food.
Tu veux le fou? Ok. Et où est-ce qu'il veut aller? Ici, ici, ici,
Next
ici ou là?
To my pion.
Tu veux le mettre à côté de ton pion comme ça? Ou comme ça?
Next to my golden.
Ici? Ça c'est correct?
Yeah.
Ok. Maintenant, qu'est-ce que tu veux bouger?
Un cheval.
Un cheval. Celui-là encore ou sortir celui-là?
So that one.
Ok. Ici ou là? À droite ou à gauche?
Goose.
À gauche. Ok. Très bien. Maintenant, qu'est-ce que tu veux faire? Quelle pièce tu veux bouger? Tu veux rocker? Ou tu veux sortir ce fou-là? Ou tu veux manger quelque chose? Ok, tu veux manger ça? Ou ça? Ou ça?
Eat my blue one.
Tu manges celui-là?
Yeah.
Avec la reine? Ok, pourvu qu'il ne te mange pas.
Man.
Oh oui, tu l'as fâché. Il est très fâché. Oh, il a fait échec là.
I'm going to stay that one.
Tu veux faire quoi?
I want the robot to eat little bit and we eat all of it.
Oui. Ben, il a mangé un pion là avec sa reine et il fait échec à notre roi. Qu'est-ce que tu vas faire
The
pour
one.
sauver ton roi? Le roi va se défendre lui-même? Ok.
Quiet.
Oh, il bouge là. Qu'est-ce que tu veux faire maintenant?
Just quiet.
Il a pleuré, le robot?
No mad.
Il n'est pas fâché, il pleure maintenant, il est juste triste? Ok.
Now it's happy.
Oui. Oh, maintenant il t'attend. Tu vois, il fait tam, tam, tam avec son pied. Qu'est-ce que tu vas faire? Ta reine encore ou une autre pièce?
A cheval.
Et cheval. Ok. Celui-là? Ok. Est-ce que tu veux aller ici, 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 ici ou là?
Right next to my golden.
Ici?
Yeah.
Oh! Il t'a mangé! Tu as vu ce petit pion te manger?
Does make the robot mad?
Ok. Comment est-ce que tu vas lui fâcher?
We eat somebody?
Ok. Si on mange quelqu'un, il sera fâché. Also, was willst du jetzt essen?
Listen, what you going to do?
Ja, was willst du essen? Hier, 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 hier.
A cheval or golden.
Was?
A cheval.
Ein Cheval? Du willst das essen hier? Okay.
Mad.
Oh ja. Da wird er ganz böse.
I like
Drauf.
mad, no cry.
Okay. Das ist dir lieber, dass er böse ist, als dass er traurig ist. Ja?
What does mean?
Traurig, trist.
And what down?
Böse, fâché.
Yeah!
Ja.
I like puppets.
Okay, tu aimes fâché.
What does we think?
Ok, qu'est-ce que tu veux bouger maintenant? Ou est-ce qu'on devrait arrêter ici? Est-ce qu'on a joué assez?
Yeah, pick
Yeah.
another one.
And finally, I would like to give a thank you for this. To my mind, I'm not a very visually or artsy inclined person, but to my mind, this very beautiful template that I used here on Google Slides to produce this video, which hopefully makes this video easier for people to absorb my advice. So thank you to those at Slides Carnival who put this up there and made it available to me for free. If you guys want to do some cool videos of advice for the internet, then perhaps you'll find something that suits you there as well. All right. Peace out, everybody. Love you all and be well.